Welcome back to the workshop presented by Applin Martin. On today's episode, we have a great new concept because for you, for the first time, we hosted a debate. Our debaters are workshop podcast alums, Don Bevacuqa, manager, Surrey Land Development, and Robert Lew, manager, Vancouver Engineering. Don and Robert tackled the age-old subject, which of these managerial styles is optimal? The two rallied to argue which type of boss is better. Boss A, who is serving and ambitious, versus Boss B, who's passive and selfless. So be sure to join us today on the workshop to see who presents the best argument and find out whether Don and Robert will remain friends or become foes. It's great to hear them duke it out, and I hope you all enjoy. Before we get into the debate, I wanted to bring up a question to each of you that I will be asking again at the end once we wrap everything up. But just so our listeners can keep this in the back of their minds as we move through. Using this debate and your own personal experiences, what qualities did each of you take as you advanced further in your career to make the bosses who each of you are today? And now for the scenarios in which side you will each be on. For the sake of preparation, each side that will be represented today was predetermined by myself. Don and Robert will each be representing a junior working professional with less than 5 years of working experience with two different types of bosses. Boss A for Don and Boss B for Robert. Don will be playing the role of a working professional with Boss A, who is self-serving and ambitious. Boss A asks more of others in order to advance their careers, which may ask for things outside of the normalities of the job description, more so of a proactive boss. Robert will be playing the role of a working professional with Boss B, who is selfless and passive, someone who does not proactively advance their career, but places more value on overall well-being of the team's position, more so of a sit-back-and-see boss. Once again, the idea and goal of the debate today is to spark a conversation on real-life situations people come across and will need to navigate within the workplace. Each debater has had a chance to prep beforehand on which questions they will be hearing today, but have not heard the other side's opinion. The themes of today will be workplace dynamics, understanding yourself as a professional, interpersonal connection, team structure, and leadership. I will be impartial to each argument and award a victory at the end of each question and scenario to which each gentleman has posed a stronger case. Again, I would like to emphasize that this debate is a would you rather type between two suboptimal positions, having those examples of boss A and B. I'm looking forward to the reasoning and descriptions during the question period and how best. I'm looking for reasoning and descriptions during the question period and how to make the best of a situation posed. And now I'd like to open up the floor for opening statements for each gentleman to introduce their positions. Robert?
Sure, I'll go on. So putting myself in the position of a junior working for Boss B. So this boss is passive, career-wise, but selfless. I think putting myself in the shoes of someone that's starting out their career or at any time I'm trying to learn is my biggest goal is skill acquisition. So I want to gain as many skills as possible. That's how I advance my career, more so than the individual gains of specific projects or specific periods of time. And secondly, I think a critical point of skill acquisition is ensuring that I work for a good team, or a good organization. I think we've all experienced the demotivating factors of working for a workplace that sucks, and there's a huge outsized effect on my own personal performance that way. I'd like to kind of give a definition of a good company, which is this. In a good company, people can do their work, focus on their work, and know that when they do a good job, good things will happen for the company and for themselves. And I think knowing that my boss is selfless will facilitate that much more than knowing my boss is ambitious. Knowing that the due fruits of my labor will be attributed to me is like a huge motivating factor. And knowing that I'll have the space to learn because my boss is going to be selfless. They're not going to utilize me just to achieve their own ends. Will give me the space to explore, fail, and we all know we learn the most from failure, such that I can acquire those skills and succeed in the future.
All right. Don?
Damn, okay.
Well spoken. Well said.
I don't know if I'll be nearly as concise, but On my side here, like I think the self-motivated aspect is extremely important in terms of harboring an environment for people to succeed and learn in, from a few aspects. Number one for me is decisiveness. So decisive decision making leads to decisive direction, both on a project path forward, just decision making. A lack of decision making sometimes can lead to a lack of competitive advantage in a marketplace, and so I think that's a big factor. The second one, dovetailing onto decisiveness, is just confidence in general, and people who are indecisive generally give off a vibe of a lack of confidence. So I think mentoring under somebody who is confident in what they do and the decisions they make harbors an opportunity for you to learn a lot from that person, and I think that's really important, being able to lean into somebody's experience. And then dovetailing on that, a person who is self-motivated, driven, tends to want to overextend themselves. That overextension does have benefits in terms of exposure opportunities. So working in an environment like that, you are able to have more touch points on different types of projects, different scenarios, different situations to be put in that you can learn from, and learning how to work in an environment where there is pressure, I think is good for people to understand how to do things the most efficient way. Like how can we get to the finish line in the most efficient manner? So again, I think those are kind of the pros, and yeah.
No, that's good. And I think you guys kind of answered the first portion of my question there, which is explain your boss's leadership style. And I think you guys touched on a lot of why those are more of the effective points. Now I'd like to hear more, again, just to finish off question one. Why is this style detrimental to project work?
Yeah, I can go. Definitely, with the description of a passive but selfless boss, passive, we frame that as in terms of career trajectory, but that will inevitably translate to project success and how hard that boss is striving to get those big wins and the client recognition. I think a big way to overcome that, honestly, is a team is made of different individuals of different skill sets, and what they bring to the table is, I, as that junior, I can be the one bringing that oomph to the table, allowing my boss can then be the guardrails, be the safety blanket. But if we're on the same page and we're trying to achieve something as a team, I can be that driver to kind of ensure the team wins, right? Or at least give the team a shot to win.
Yeah,
that's
for sure.
That's how I'd see it.
Understand the holes, right? I think with any approach, I'm going to go back to this mantra that I always rant to Robert about, and that I always rant to my division about. So anybody that's on my team, has heard me talk about this before. But it's leadership happens in two directions, right? You have to lead up the chain of command. You have to enable your supervisors and your superiors to have the information to be able to make decisions on everybody's behalf accurately. Because if the information is not flowing upwards, they can only deal with make decisions based on the information they have. Conversely, obviously, leadership needs to happen in a downward fashion as well. You have to support your people and set them up for success as well. Otherwise, the whole thing breaks down. But it's important that it goes both ways, because if it doesn't go both ways, communication is a two-way street. So I agree. On your point, Julian, about the detrimental aspects of our position here, with the self-serving boss aspect, a person with all of those negative traits will definitely lean on their people hard, and push their people to get the most out of them. However, typically they'll also burn their people out as a result. And you get really good short-term gains and short-term results out of people when you push them on the edge of burnout, but there is a point of diminishing returns in the medium to long term that stunts and hinders their growth, and reduces morale and contributes to negative culture in that environment too. So that's 100% the drawback of this typology of leadership, for sure.
And Another reason I'd prefer to work under a selfless but like more passive boss is I think the achievements of a team, like we face it, we're in a team environment here in engineering. You know, it's not just like one person, very rarely one person against a project and a task. Is, you know, look at the most admired sports teams. Like I think the team acting in cohesion, even if each individual player is not like that superstar achiever, can lead to a lot better outcomes than like an individual superstar supported by like role players or people that like quote unquote don't even matter. And you know, I'm not a basketball player. I'm aping this from, or not a basketball watcher even, aping this from the Golden State Warriors. But what was their saying? Strength in numbers. And I think they were one of the strong, enduring dynasties. They definitely celebrated the achievements and the contributions of each individual person on that team, and that led to great success. So I feel like that's the same for the workplace.
Yeah. I think I'm going to give that first question to Robert. I like the point that he brought up of empowering the junior, and then if you're able to have the confidence in yourself, and even though you see somebody who, you know what I mean, as a superior, quote unquote, again, when you're earlier in your career, you see everybody as like the ones beside you are like your fellow juniors, but then everybody above has that, you know what I mean, the kind of that gap.
Here's a rebuttal point. This is my this is my half court buzzer beater podcast. But the passive boss, generally, in my experience, because I've worked for a number of them, is not willing to have difficult conversations when needed, and can have a tendency to not provide constructive feedback in the moment when it's needed. And I think, especially earlier on in people's career, like those little course corrections are what is needed to like ensure people are set on the right path. And if you have an aversion to having difficult conversations, like your people are gonna not develop at the same rate as much as possible. And I think that undermines the cohesion of a team environment.
Yeah.
Like look at Jordan and the 90s Bulls, right? Like, you know,
more basketball.
I was gonna say, we could just turn it into a sports podcast.
We just get debate.
But you know, like it's you know, you gotta have a high level of accountability too, right? And there has to be transparent communication around it. There's no beating around the bush.
No, totally.
But anyways, yeah, I'm still
I know I still didn't win the point back.
Yeah.
But.
Well, I'm still gonna keep with Ryan again because I like that point. And then again, like just being from personal experience, when I was coming up as a junior, being able to feel like I've had that voice to be able to kind of, you know what I mean, insert my 2 cents when needed, or insert my opinion. I think that's from, I know I'm impartial, but I think a lot of people are kind of scared to have that when you're in a room of quote unquote adults, when you're just getting in the room, right? So having that and being able to be like, okay, maybe I can try to overstep here and take that, be that confident person. I think that
you just do what I always do, because I always just say like, I'm gonna ask a dumb question, but I'm gonna say it. Use the self-deprecating angle to start, and then nobody can ever fault you for speaking up.
It works.
Yeah.
So
maybe I'm an idiot.
We'll give that one to Robert. I know you guys are already kind of getting into the team aspect of it, which I think is really important, and that's kind of where I'm headed right now. And thank God you guys didn't spoil it. With question 2, I can tell you guys are itching. How do you deal with team morale as being the junior and adversity, knowing your boss's leadership style?
Okay. Maybe.
I'll start with
exactly.
I'll start with Don this time.
I think it all comes back to like communication styles. So understanding the information you need to bring to somebody in order to be able to obtain the direction you need on a task, or you know. So let's just say we're 2 junior designers working on a project for boss A, and like we know we need to get to X outcome, whether it's like get over this design hurdle or whatever else. Understanding the communication style you need to approach your boss with to get the information out of them. I really think that applies to both leadership styles, but like, you know, understand how they need it conveyed to them in order to yield the best response for you. Like, I think it, you know, kind of goes to both sides really, but, does that answer the question? I don't know.
Kind of. I'm okay. I'm also, yeah, if they're coming to you, I would say more so with more of not an attack, but if they're trying to reprimand you, I guess you could say, or they're giving you direction, how would you deal with the team's aspect of saying somebody's, like you said, because you're more of a boss who's going to be more harder on you, like you said before, more of a straightforward way, right? So how would you deal kind of with delineating that information to, or distributing that information to your team, knowing that the way that they might be giving it to you is more of a straightforward way?
Right.
Sorry, if I could interject to maybe help you answer your question easier. Like the way I thought about it is like basically this. Like the first question is, which boss would you rather work for, and why is that more effective? I think this one is basically on the team that boss would create. Yeah. Presumably, which team would you rather be on, and how? Why is that? What are the team dynamics, and why are they better or worse?
Right. I think the multiple touch points is important in a high-paced environment. That group can, if they have, really good dialogue amongst themselves, learn a lot from each other. And I think, to the points I was trying to say in my half-court shot, I think like a team that is led by a person who is extremely self-motivated, there will generally be a feedback or an environment around providing feedback to others in that environment. And I think that feedback is what we all need to learn and grow. Feedback both from like a technical standpoint. So how we can improve on efficiency of what we're doing, technical proficiency of what we're doing, and how to lean on that feedback internally from a communication perspective as well. So improving all of the aspects of that team dynamic, because at the end of the day we win or lose as a team. And so those external wins ultimately lead to internal accolades, which lead to increased morale across that group as well.
Right. Robert? I think like the feedback, I may be thinking too negatively of this boss A, but I think feedback that boss being self-serving would use it as a tool to get what they want. And if you're not part of what they want, you might not get the right feedback or like the long-term feedback that will help you succeed in your career. You might just get the short-term, you need to be faster, or you can't, like, are you dumb? Why are you screwing this up? I mean, that's that's far-fetched.
But I think it's also important, like if I put myself as a junior in that scenario, like ask the leading question. Then it's like, you need to be faster. It's like, okay, well, how can I be faster? Or like, how can I do this better? Like, there also needs to be like a want from the junior side, like from my, as the junior side. The communication form may be very direct, and like there may be an abscess of context and information, but if there is an abscess of context and information, like withdraw the why from them.
Right.
It's like 9 times out of 10, like people that you work, like if somebody is motivated themselves, they obviously understood why something needed to happen in a certain way in order for it to drive a successful outcome. And if you ask them, they'll give you that info. They might not give it to you from the outset, but they'll for sure, like if you draw it out of them, they'll give it to you.
Yeah, I think underlying like everything is definitely 100% personal motivation is like the biggest factor here. Where I would prefer the team environment created under Boss B is like, if I think about like a good like team cohesion is kind of built on trust, recognition, like a shared purpose and winning. I fully contend it's more likely that Boss A might achieve more like project wins, or they'll be a lot hungrier for their own personal gains for sure. But in terms of trust, I think knowing that someone's selfless versus like self-serving, that's like the hugest thing in trust. Like you never really know that they're on your side or they got your back. Recognition, I think that's a huge motivating factor. If you're not getting the recognition of the hard work, blood, sweat, and tears you put in, if you pulled like 4 all-nighters to get the submission out, your boss gets to ride in on the silver horse and like claim all the glory, that doesn't feel good. Shared purpose, again, it's like, are you guys working together for the betterment of the company or the wins of the team, or are we simply like a means to an end for a boss that just wants to climb the ladder? And then all those things kind of circle back in point is, I think, contrary to what I said at the onset, is like a higher team cohesion definitely in the long run leads to more wins, in my opinion. So yeah, that's why I would pick Boss B's team environment.
I do think, though, the one thing that I think about being a factor as well, team cohesion, personal development, is like visibility.
Right.
And I think people working under Boss A would have a tendency to have greater visibility across a company, and especially, an executive group, than a passive boss, Boss B, which ultimately has a factor in, or is a contributing factor in people's ability to move through the ranks themselves as well, and understand the external factors at play.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a factor. But that's, I think, again, short term versus long term thinking there. Like visible.
We'll get to long term. Yeah, that'll be the next one.
Sorry.
But yeah, sorry to cut you guys off. In terms of the question up to it, I'm going to give it to Don this one. Again, I think it just the directness of how you explained it, being direct with your team and then being direct as a junior. I think that was a big thing, especially now when I was coming up and now when I'm working kind of with my own team, we're all still kind of junior. But having that direct, like you explained it before, that direct line of conversation, I think is extremely important, knowing what you need to get done, how you need to get it done, and how to describe it, right? Like that's the biggest thing, I think, in terms of
what's the
team
objective.
Exactly.
Right?
Find me what is the objective, right? While you're learning it, but you need to know what you're doing. I think that was the biggest point for me there to give you the win on that one.
So when do we do the body shots?
We still got a lot of time. And now you guys mentioned it. You guys have both been kind of alluding to already the long-term success of a career. So we'll finish off with this final question: is how do you position yourself for long-term success, knowing your boss's leadership style? Robert, I'll open up with you this time.
Sure. I think the things I'll say here are, I think we can all agree, so much of our achievement, our success, our ability to function in our roles is like we are a self-limiting factor in like our procrastination, our motivation, our fears, and all that stuff. And I think that is exacerbated. So if we could be potentially 50% of what we should be based on our own internal downfalls, is I think that's exacerbated by the boss you have. So say now you have all this fear and procrastination or timidness or whatever. If you've got an overbearing boss that's not afraid to chew you out or use you to get what they want and not and you don't think they're really on your side to grow, now that 50% is 25%. And I think a big, especially starting out, a huge factor in your ability to grow is having chances for failure. So I don't know if you guys heard of the missing banister theory, but we can all walk on a sidewalk without falling down. We have absolute confidence nothing bad's gonna happen. Take that same sidewalk, put it 100 stories in the air, and double the size, double the width of it, you're still going to be quaking in your boots taking every step across the way because the consequences of failure are so great. And you're so focused on the banister that you don't have, that safety guardrail that you don't have, that every step becomes almost insurmountable in terms of the fear and apprehension associated with it. And I think knowing that one of the traits I think of a selfless boss is that patience to work with you and know that you're going to screw up, give you the space to screw up, such that you can position yourself for that long-term success. And plus getting, the do-overs, right? If you screw up on one thing, the boss is not going to immediately take you off that task because you suck at it, and give you a second, give you a third, maybe a fourth chance to get it right because they know that that's going to be what's best for you in the long run.
I'm gonna say yes, but the support in failure is important. I 100% agree. I think that's how you build trust in teams. Is if you have someone's back when they make a mistake and you don't throw them under the tracks, and you help them understand where the mistake was, two support the solution. Not I call this windshield mentality, not rear view mirror mentality, like dwelling on the past, is not productive. It's like, okay, how do we move forward? Like that, I completely agree. But I do think that I think the worst cases of boss B are one, supporting, like, think about working on a team where somebody keeps fucking the same thing up over and over and over again, and your boss is not willing to have a difficult conversation with that person about changes to process or changes in approach, and you have to continue coming in and firefighting for that person's mistakes. Like, there comes a point in time where the support is necessary for someone's growth early on, but I think it hits a wall when there's a need for like actual definitive corrective action. And sometimes that needs to happen in an environment where there's like not a fear of confrontation. Again, I think it's all about how things are communicated. Not that there's like, yes, there's a confrontational conversation that needs to occur. However, as long as it occurs in a non-demeaning manner, then like things can be positive and will be positive. Like, I go back to all of my, time playing sports growing up as a kid, and like there's nothing more annoying than like your line mate who keeps making the same bad fucking pass on the breakout, right? And it's just like, that's not what we practiced, right?
I don't even know what sport that is.
I'm thinking hockey now. But so I think like that's the side of it that I see in terms of the benefits for a boss A, like more opportunities long term, and I think better team cohesion because there's an environment for feedback, and not opportunities for repetitive failures to occur.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think
because you can always like extrapolate to the polls, right?
Yeah, and we're a bit doing that here. We're extrapolating boss A is ambitious, selfless, but they could have
sociopathic,
they can somehow have great dialogue, and then boss B is like, I think part of the selflessness of boss B is like, I think we can't get trapped to think that they're like just like a bleeding heart to everybody. They're still here for the company and they're being selfless there. Yep. It's just they're not selfish when it comes to their own success. So
yeah, I think after all that, I think I'm going to give it to Robert. I like the analogy of the sidewalk. I think that again brings me back to the days of when I was again a junior, and then knowing that, hey, you're not going to make that first mistake without, again, we're taking to the definitions, right? Where one's more, more, I guess, straightforward, and the other one's more of a lean back and apologetic, I guess you could say, right? So I think in that way, in the way that you describe that, I think that one is a good argument and a good lesson to take, right? Is the patience of that boss for boss B.
Yep.
So I'll give you that one too. All right, so now that's it with the questions. So now we're going to go into the scenarios portions of this. So now in the scenarios portion, you're going to put yourself in the shoes of the younger working professional. And how would you deal with each situation that's presented to you when having to deal with the respective bosses and their personality types that are given? So I have 6 scenarios here for each of you to go through. Scenario 1. You realize you will not be able to hit a hard project deadline. How do you approach your boss to make them aware of this? And I'll start with Dom.
I think like communicate early, be upfront about it, and like don't sugarcoat. I think, I always employ this mantra. Derek and I talk about this constantly. I heard it on a My First Million podcast, but it's like skip to the end. Right. Like your introduction should be the problem, or it should be the conclusion. Like the context and weaving can be provided thereafter. I just know from personal experience, there's nothing more agonizing to me than if somebody sends me a message there's a problem. It's like, what is it?
Let's play 20 questions.
Yeah, and how do we?
So it's I think especially with somebody who is results driven, talk about the issue towards the result immediately, 100%. And again, I think with somebody who's results driven, focusing on the what and then the how. I think that's super important, like understanding, so let's talk about like a project deadline issue. It's like, okay, we're not going to be able to get the client exactly what they asked for when they asked for it by. So how can we get them 80% of what they wanted and still meet the objectives of this exercise? Or, because there's always ways we can be malleable in that situation too, right? Mm-hmm. So we'll go back to the like provide surplus value. The thing that we have to do in that scenario is always provide surplus value. And that's the way that like you provide surplus value to your leader, is by communicating up front. You have as much time up front as possible in order to like scenario plan. And then at the end of the day, we're providing surplus value to our client in that scenario. So.
All right. Yes, it's kind of funny. Like when I was reading all the scenarios you generated, Julian, I was like, they're kind of like tee-ups for like boss B in a way. So I feel like I'm going to be, in a way, arguing against my own point here. But I would say everything you said, Don, is absolutely true. Is you have to just be clear, problem up front. I think that holds true regardless of who your boss is. I think here the context of what you're trying to achieve matters, where and this is where like the proactiveness needs to show up on the part of the employee. If I'm just an employee, I need to tell my boss, here, this is the problem. I don't think we're going to make this deadline. And then adding the context, this is what I think we can achieve, and this is what I want to try to achieve, right? So fill in that lack of, address the passivity on the part of the boss, because I think they're going to be going out of their way to protect you and make you feel like you're not a problem, worried about your stress, and be like, oh, don't worry about the deadline. We'll just tell the clients it's going to be late. And I think you injecting some of that ambition and like that proactivity yourself to be like, hey, you know what? I know we're going to be late, but I think we can make this, we can accelerate the delivery of this, and this is how I want to achieve it. And, being very, very clear with your boss that, hey, I'm willing to put in the extra work to do this. Do you not have to protect me from it? Actually, this is my mistake, and I think I should own it. I want to do this kind of thing. That's how I'd approach that situation with Boss B.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'll give that one to Don. I like the directness of it, and knowing that, like you said before, is that your boss is more results-oriented versus team result-oriented, I guess you could say, is that they would appreciate you coming straight to them and presenting them like, okay, I'm not going to be able to do it. Here's what I can do. I'm also going to provide this. And then them being able to respond in a certain way, knowing that, okay, like they will be hard on you. Obviously, you're not going to be able to do it, but having the assumption that they are going to appreciate that, okay, well, I understand what you're doing, and then that's where we're going to go.
I think so. Valuable takeaways for all the listeners. I absolutely agree. That's critical.
Well, and I think the thing to be bold and underlined for me is like the message I think both of us were trying to convey there is like understand the communication style of your leader.
Yep.
And do your best to communicate with him in that style.
Yeah.
Like that's universal, right?
Yeah.
So
100%. Yeah.
It's no different than like mentoring somebody and understanding the best way somebody learns.
Yeah, you need to know their ins and outs.
I'm like Keaton McKay will make fun of me, but it's like, I'm a picture book guy, so I need people to like draw me diagrams and all that stuff. It's like, don't write me a fucking essay. Yeah. Like draw me a picture. Let's go. But some people learn the opposite way, right? So.
Right. All right, scenario number 2. You're starting to feel overwhelmed as of late within the workplace. How do you approach them and make them aware of the situation?
Right. I guess I'm answering by the way we're going back and forth.
Yep.
Honestly, very similar to scenario 1, where, if you're feeling overwhelmed, I think it comes down to personal accountability first and foremost. You need to figure out like why you're feeling overwhelmed. What are the contributing factors? Because, let's face it, a lot of the time we're feeling overwhelmed is, we made a mistake, or we even not a direct mistake, but we just kind of let things pile up or get a little too old or a little too aged, and the small problem became a big problem. Or, it's just external factors where it's just a bunch of work that like way too much is coming down the line. Either way, I think, Boss B, their predilection will be to like protect you and make sure you survive the overwhelm. And the way I would approach bosses, like very clearly, I think they would go out of their way to like analyze the situation, see where they can help you, and that's a given. I think the biggest thing to focus on in that conversation is what you want to get out of it and like how you derive your long-term benefit. Because I think a lot of the time when we have problems solved for us, like it feels good in the short term, but in the long term, we miss out on an opportunity to like build trust in ourselves and also solve the problem ourselves. And like you always feel like that's the one that got away, kind of thing. So I think when you're feeling overwhelmed, definitely seek help from your boss, regardless of which boss it is. But be very clear on like how you want to approach this. This is the frame. Like I want to get this win out of this bad situation. Help me do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think with like with boss A, it's like if we're having, so if somebody's overwhelmed, they're having an issue like meeting objectives, basically, right? And I think with a results-oriented person, again, start there. Like, I'm having an issue meeting these objectives. I think one of the best things that I've done under like self-serving leadership is like asking them how they dealt with something when they were in my seat. I think I've gotten some of the best advice from anybody asking them that question, because then it provides a little bit of self-reflection for that an opportunity for self-reflection for that person. But most importantly, like they're results oriented, and so like at the end of the day, they figured out ways to get things done, and maybe they have a better way than I do. Like maybe I'm overwhelmed because I'm going about things the wrong way or going about things in an inefficient way, or my prioritization is not synced up in a way that leads me to like utilize my time in the most effective manner. So that's kind of how I think you can use boss A's tendencies to the best of your ability in that scenario.
Would you fear that boss A thinks your overwhelm is just weakness?
Not necessarily. If you, at the end of the day, like explain the why, right? Explain the why. Right. I think one thing that boss A can do better than boss B in this scenario as well, going back to the visibility piece, like teams that have greater visibility in an organization generally, when under the gun from a workload perspective, are able to garner resources outside of that team to execute and make things and hit the team's objectives. So that's something that I have seen a tendency to be more available for boss A than boss B, which again can like help with the short term overload scenario. It's not a like permanent fix. No, but it's it's something that could be a temporary measure as well.
Yeah, I mean I think rebuttal wise there is one reason I kind of missed saying this earlier, but one reason why I'd rather work on a boss B's team is actually exactly what you said, garnering help from other teams. Is I think, like say I'm working for a PM, at the PM level, people generally like to help people that have helped them or are just helpful in general, and like knowing that my boss is like self-serving is unlikely that that person's garnered really deep mutually beneficial relationships with other PMs. So I think even in that scenario, boss B would be able to also garner help. Even if they have less visibility, they've got more friends in the organization, kind of thing.
Yeah, I almost kind of want to give you guys both a point there, not to sound cliche, because like it is an important point in the workplace. Is obviously people do feel overwhelmed, whether it's day one or day 101, right? Like there is going to be kind of a point where you do feel overwhelmed, whether it's personally or whether it is with work. I like the point, Robert, that he brought up at the end was that although the work might not be seen, somebody with more of a wait and see approach and more of a team focused morale versus always being so driven, they may have, like you said before, the resources backed behind them for providing them originally that might be able to fill in the gaps, and then obviously the extra teamwork to kind of get the task done. But yeah, if I can give both you points, I like the directness again of the argument that you had provided too. But I think I'll give that one to Robert too as well. So 3-2 if you got 3-2 if everyone's keeping score.
I'll take any bare win I could get.
Yeah. 3-2 for those keeping home, keeping score at home. Scenario 4. You are having trouble with your coworkers within the workplace. How do you make your boss aware of the situation?
I can lead off here. I've talked about this already, but lead up the chain of command. Like if you're having an issue with a team member, the first thing you need to do is talk to your leader about it. I think boss A in this scenario is going to be better for a number of reasons, but one, not shying away from confrontation, so willing to provide people feedback when needed, having a direct approach, like timeliness. I think there's nothing worse when we all have to receive constructive feedback, and we've all provided it in our careers. And there's nothing worse than a enormous gap in time from when something occurred to when something's discussed. I think like immediate action is necessary so that people can learn from their immediate mistake rather than potentially repeating that mistake over and over. And then there being a greater underlying negative sentiment in the group associated with a person doing that thing the wrong way. Like I think about, putting my junior designer hat back on, giving this feedback to my supervisor, and then still working with a person and then still doing the same thing over and over again, despite me already going out on a limb and having that difficult conversation with my boss, only for them to not have the difficult conversation with that person. Like that would be incredibly frustrating to me too. So I think, I think it's better for those reasons.
Right. I think, for sure, I think having someone that's dragging down the team is a huge hit to morale, regardless how you cut it. And I think if I had issues with somebody on my team working for a boss, I would want them to address it. I think there is a risk with, self-serving boss that they don't care to make people under their command play nice with each other. Like it may not be relevant to their achievement. It may not be relevant to their mission of just, I don't care if you guys don't like each other, as long as you guys respect me, I get what I want, right? And I think, playing off the tendencies of boss B to, I think we're ascribing here that they're going to be more value harmony versus like direct confrontation is, I think one thing I will say is I think Boss B would have an easier time fostering like a collaborative approach to fixing a problem where, I think talk about intrinsic versus extrinsic motivators like shame versus guilt, where I think guilt internally is something you did wrong and you will strive to like fix that. But I think shame brings the opposite outcomes, where if you have shame, meaning you did something bad and the group knows it, you tend to shrink away or like try to find an escape. So I think in that sense, having boss be able to like walk that fine line between shame and guilt and have the team collaborate on a solution. And, I think the biggest, talk about direct for confrontation or directness is having me work directly with, say, the person that is struggling would eventually would lead to a lot of better team cohesion at the end of the day, rather than, man, I gotta just fix this guy's work. Instead of fixing this guy's work, now, I've been tapped on the shoulder. It's like, here, mentor this guy. There's an opportunity here. So I think that can lead to better team outcomes that way.
Yeah, and I know
that's taking only the positive aspects of Boss B and then applying them in a more positive way.
Yeah,
because if we take both things to the polls, then like obviously there's negatives on each, right? So I just worry about like on the polarity side of things with Boss B, like a lack of inaction leading to decreased motivation. I think what's the easiest way to demotivate high performers is a lack of confidence in decision making and a lack of decisivity. So there's that risk on the other side too, right?
Yeah, it's hard. We're arguing hypothetical.
No, of course, yeah, and then that's all I'm ever trying to do here, right? Yeah. You have these two. I don't want to call them opposites, but I do see it differently. And I'm going to give that one to Don with that. I like again, putting yourself in the junior shoes. If you're able to have that difficult conversation about, and again, it's a difficult situation to be put in, right? Like ideally, you know what I mean? Everybody supports each other, but like a hypothetical debate. If you're able to have that, I like the point you brought up, if you're able to have that difficult conversation with a superior, right? If you're, again, like you said, you're speaking up to somebody, then you should be able, and both are results oriented, then they should be able to then relay that information back down towards your team, right? In a manner that
isn't demeaning, right?
No, of course not. They're not going to go.
No, like I'm complaining about person A. It's like, bring them in. Let's go.
Yeah, the door's that way. No. Yeah, and tell them to bring their stuff in with them too.
Go get a box.
No, but I think that's a way where, like you said before, you want to not that everything's going to be immediate, but I like that just the action on the person knowing that the boss will have more of an urgency, I guess you could say, to help out the team in order to get results done faster and more efficient for the team. I like that point there. So
Bias for action.
yeah.
Honestly, I agree.
Yeah. Scenario 5. You do not believe you are receiving the recognition you deserve for your work, and in turn, beginning to have a poor attitude and lack of motivation. How do you bring this up with your boss?
I lost track. Who's going first?
I'll start with Dominic this time.
Not going to sugarcoat it. With a results-oriented boss, this can typically be an issue. Like if you're working in a high-pressure environment, results-oriented, the focus is usually on the next thing. There's not usually a lot of like reflection on the past thing. However, again, like I think as a junior in that scenario, it's important. We always want to try to fill the gaps that our leader has. And so if your leader's having a tendency to, probably be overwhelmed themselves and, just trying to push through the next thing and push through the next thing, be that beacon of recognition within the group of like, hey guys, we got this thing done last week. It was fun. I enjoyed X, Y, or Z component of it. Like,
yeah,
rah, right? Like it's super easy to do that. And you don't have to be the leader of a team to do that. And again, back to like that's leading up, right? I think it's important to do that.
I think you absolutely you got to be that beacon regardless. The way I'd not want to have happen with like Boss A is recognition amongst the team is very valuable. I think a lot of us, especially at the junior level, are really starving for recognition that goes up the chain of command all the way to the top. And I think the biggest fear with Boss A is that recognition would all go to them because they achieved it. They led the team. They said this. They did this to make the team do that. I think with like Boss B, almost the challenge to face is garnering enough opportunities to like excel at a task or a project to get that recognition. And again, I think I go back to being that team player, kind of being a partner for the boss, where it's like, okay, if the boss is gonna create this like safe, collaborative environment, how do I turn this collaboration into project success for the team and for myself? I don't have any doubt that like Boss B would bring any opportunities for recognition up the chain. And I think, a good lesson learned is just make sure at kind of all times, like your boss knows what you're doing, good or bad. And especially on the good side is as long as Boss B knows that you're doing something good, that they will bring up the chain of command. So it's just giving them the information.
Question for you then.
Yes.
So I basically said, okay, be the beacon of recognition. And you're saying be the driving force within Boss B's team. If you're a junior designer with sub 5 years of experience, which thing's easier for a junior person to do? I think it's easier for a junior person to be the beacon because it's very easy to, it's very easy to internally communicate, cheerlead a little bit there, versus like I don't know if a lot of 0 to 5 year, 10-year people would have those skills necessary to like lead up in the way that you're saying.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. A rebuttal to a rebuttal is I think it's frequency versus amplitude, right?
Yeah.
So I think you're right in that the ability for a 0 to 5 year junior employee to like be that beacon of achievement is less likely than them being able to be that beacon of recognition. However, I think value-wise is like we all remembered way back early in our careers when the boss's boss pats you on the back and say, "Hey, I heard about that project. Good job!" Right? Those things are super meaningful, and like the amplitude, even though it's less frequent, knowing that that's going to get up the chain, even if I don't hear it, just knowing that my boss is not going to like claim my credit is like a huge motivator to performing well. And I think, like I said, like maybe the frequency is less, but also it's like, okay, if your buddy he's a 4-year EIT and I'm a 3-year EIT and he passed me on the back and says good job, it's like doesn't quite hit the same as if like, David Chan came and gave me a fist bump.
Yeah. No, I think that's the biggest thing too, is having patience, knowing that your small wins, even though, you know what I mean, not everybody's going to be saying them right away, but knowing that in the back of your mind they are, like you said, having that wait and see approach. I think that's, and having the patience, I think that's the biggest thing as a junior, is knowing that that boss there might be more rah, go, right? And it's never really, no one really mean as much to them, versus having more of a wait and see and the patience and that things will come to you. I think that approach, I'll give the point to you for that one.
Sweet.
Yeah. And now we'll go to the last one here. And I know anybody who's worked in consulting or any sort of kind of field is, this has definitely happened before. And it's one that I think is extremely important, especially one that we're in the service industry where we do deliver projects and we do deliver deliverables for people to approve. So a mistake was known on a project sent out and negative feedback has been provided by an external client. Blame is being placed on yourself and the team. How do you deal with negative commentary? Robert, let's start with this final one.
Okay. I think the negative commentary here is gonna, as a tendency, gonna be try to be absorbed by your boss, which I think any boss, even boss A, will tend to do. Is like, bosses are bosses for a reason. They take responsibility. And I think how I would approach this situation is, again, mitigating the weakness of my boss, where they might tend to take too much responsibility and shield me from it as trying to protect me, is asking for accountability, right? Hey, boss, this is what's going to help me most. I want to be held accountable for my part in this. And I trust you to give me an accurate assessment of what part I had to play in this. That's how I'd approach this situation. Obviously, goes without saying, offer my services to help fix the problem as expediently as possible. But making sure, whether it's in the moment or in a debrief or a postmortem, to get that accountability, get that feedback to ensure that I take away the right lessons for next time.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think the biggest thing, I think there's a huge opportunity to work for Boss A in this type of scenario here. Obviously, the downside on the polarity element would be like throwing the baby in front of the train tracks, which would be the worst possible outcome, irrespective of Boss A or Boss B in that scenario. But I've been in this position from a construction standpoint, design standpoint, working in multiple regions. Like I've seen it I've seen it anywhere and in every company I've worked in, and I've appreciated working with somebody who is decisive and wants to work towards, is results oriented immediately, because again, there's always a immediate focus on action. What's the issue? How can we go about resolving it? And I think in these scenarios here, Boss B would more often than Boss A have a tendency to ruminate on how everybody feels in the given scenario, right, versus focusing on the issue and the potential solutions. There's obviously a place for understanding people's feelings and discussing that, but I think the two very much need to be separated. I think there's a lot of emotion involved in a scenario like this, and people can shy away from picking up the phone with clients and having the internal dialogue necessary to make sure this doesn't happen and that we fix the problem, when you're focusing on the emotional aspect of it. Because it's not to say that we need to be gonna compartmentalize all the time, but I think it's important to deal with them separately, which I feel like Boss A would have a greater ability to compartmentalize than Boss B.
Yeah, that's probable. I think if we're talking about how we would approach this as a junior, one way I would motivate Boss B, talk about managing upwards or leaning upwards, is letting them know the effect that this has on the team, that like this unresolved issue is causing a lot of, mental strain amongst the team. We don't feel good about it. Can you take the action to make this better? And I think that, whether they might not have been self-motivated to do that, but like for the team, they will. I think the other thing that kind of goes unsaid here that we haven't really touched on is, you and the team are being held to task on a project screw up. There is a high probability that the boss had a big part to play in this. And I think knowing that my boss is not going to throw me under a bus to get out of Dodge is a huge thing. Like I know, and then it's a small industry. Reputations stick with you for a long time, and if having the fear that a particular client or a particular boss within the company or somebody else within the company has associated me with a big failure that is not of my own volition is something that it would be very hard to live with.
Yeah, I think, I don't know if you had anything to add on top of that, but yeah, what I was just going to say was I liked Don's point about removing, and I think that's important to do as a junior, is when someone is not giving blame but placing blame is obviously on the harsher end, is being able to take the emotion of the blame out of what's actually being taught.
Yep.
Some things may come across as, and maybe they do mean it in a demeaning way, but some things may sound demeaning, but at the end of the day, you guys are both trying to achieve the end goal, right? So I think that point of being able to, although they're trying to give you a lesson, and yes, there was a mistake made, right? But how do you deal with the mistake is, at the end of the day, work is work. And I know sometimes, like you said, emotions do get in. It's a high pace and it's a stressful environment. It's impossible to not feel emotional at times. Yeah. But having your point of being able to take that out of the equation, and it's obviously difficult, is I think the biggest thing is no one ideally is out in the world to get you when you are working on a team, right?
Yeah.
So taking that was the biggest point, is being able to take that portion away and just applying the end result and fixing it. I think that was the point that gave it to you there.
Yeah. Again, great point.
Yeah.
I agree.
So we actually had 8 scenarios, so we're... Oh. Yeah, I know. So we actually are tied. So what I'm going to do is we'll end it off, and I'll just give the winner to the closing. Once we wrap it up, we'll put on the line, and we'll wrap it up with a closing statement, which I think is very fitting for this before we conclude the debate, and then you guys are able to kind of sum up the findings that we've kind of discussed here. So I'll give it to Don if you want to start with your closing statement.
I think in either scenario, either boss, the accountability lies with every member of the team to understand like strengths, weaknesses, communication, strengths and weaknesses, or personal tendencies. Like, understand your team. Like, at the end of the day, we're dealing with people, and to what we were talking about earlier, like, we all have there's like foundational elements to the duty of care we need to conduct ourselves in. So in my mind, there's like the duty of care to our clients. Obviously, we need to have our clients' interests at best heart here. There's a duty of care professionally that we have, ethically and technically, as a result of, us putting our seal on the drawings every day. And like, first and foremost, there's the duty of care you have to your team members, because they're like people at the end of the day too. So I think like understanding how to approach people in a given situation, and understanding what the desired outcome is the most important part in like moving forward, and battling overcoming adversity in a given scenario, and 2, being able to progress as an individual yourself too.
Okay, closing statements. So I think going back to what my overall objective is as someone new to the company, or like a junior within the first 5 years, or honestly, even right now as I speak, I have the same overarching objective. My objective is maximizing my skill acquisition. So I'm trying to be the best version of myself possible. I think kind of underlying all of this discussion here is like the scenarios we put ourselves into. Obviously, we put ourselves in those shoes. We are that someone that's trying to achieve something for themselves in either scenario, right? And I firmly believe that a lot of the holdups of the limiting factors in people's achievements are on the psychological side and on the motivation side. And I think having a safe environment is a huge deal to being able to like test my own limits and see where they go. And having the safety of, a few, not unlimited failures is very important. And, going back to, the way we run this company is it's team first, all for one for all. And I would very, very much be happier working with people that see it that way and are not self-serving to a fault. And, I thinking back to when the question was posed to us about which side of the argument we want to be on. And it's a hard choice. It's a hard choice. Honestly, there's great points either way. The way I conceptualize it is this. My team will know that I love quadrants, and this is like how I thought about it. So, the fixed factor here is ourselves, right? We are not the variable. The variable is like what type of boss we are going to be in. So in terms of fixed, like the two kind of outcomes for us, knowing our fixed skill set are we eventually going to kind of outgrow our boss, or are we going to not outgrow our boss? That's kind of how I see it in the context of this. And in either scenario, I think it's kind of clear that the selfless boss wins here, because if I am going to outgrow my boss, but he's selfish, at a certain point when I'm too close, I will be held back. That is the fear. If I'm not going to outgrow him, the fear is I will be compartmentalized and turned into a cog in the machine and just used to achieve a greater end because he sees no like greater use for me. If I have a selfless boss and I am eventually going to outgrow him or her, they will celebrate me. They will do everything in their power to help me do that, and they will find new mentors and encourage me to find new mentors so I can do that. And honestly, if I'm not going to outgrow them, they'll still do their best to make me the best version of myself rather than try to, discard me or get the most out of me for just their own selfish means. So like just taking that game theory quadrant thing is like either choice is I'd rather have the selfless boss. And that's how I made that decision.
I think it's so personality trait dependent too, though. Because if you thrive in an environment where you need pressure to perform and that pressure is not there will not be motivation for you to be engaged in the work that you're doing as well.
Cool.
Like I obviously am like severe type A, and I've worked for
type A for boss.
Yeah, sorry, no, lack of familiarity here. But like severe type A person, and I've worked under leaders that are type Bs, and not saying that type Bs don't make good leaders, but something that was like extremely frustrating for me was just that like lack of somebody kind of pushing the cart down the hill a little bit. Like I always needed that little bit of a push. In terms of, like I think about the greatest opportunities that, we've had across our careers. In the moment, it feels a bit overwhelming. You're anxious about performance. You're anxious about like your ability to perform externally and internally. And looking back on those moments, like, well, I was just nervous because I didn't want to fail. But I think if you're in an environment that, you're wearing a straitjacket and you got padding on the walls, there's not really an ability to like be as uncomfortable as often. And I think that's also important for people to, push the boundaries a little bit. And in order for them to excel professionally, they need to step out of their comfort zone once in a while. But again, like not every single moment of every single day as well. So.
Right. Last rebuttal to the rebuttal.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think this. They're both like hard choices to make, and they're both like upsides and downsides. I go back to this: is intrinsic versus extrinsic motivators. I think Don, you talked about having a boss that provides that motivation. I think that in the long run, like we do these jobs because we love them, and for us to like do them for external motivation is not going to sustain us for an entire career, like a 30, 35, 40-year career. I think we need to find that internal motivation, and having an opportunity to do so with a little bit more freedom and leeway is the way to get there.
Yeah, and I think that you guys kind of both at the end there were able to fight for your own points as well as kind of pose pros for the other person, which I think was really good. And I don't want to give it a tie, obviously, because it seems so cliche.
Well, actually, these gloves are for the loser to beat you up.
Yeah, I know. And that's kind of what I want to get to, right? Is
Give it to Robert then. I want to get a couple shots.
No, but like you said before, each personality is really based off of who you are kind of growing up, right? And you're able to take both of those traits from each person and then try to build who you are, right? So using this debate and your own personal experiences, what qualities did each of you take as you advanced further to kind of make who you both are today?
Oh, no winner? Are we?
Oh, see after this.
Oh, okay. This is the bonus.
I think so I've worked for a number of people over a significant time span. I'll even draw on my personal experience in the general contracting field, working for my dad when I was 13 years old, digging, drain tile trenches and stuff. And like, I think there's always pros and there's always cons for any person's leadership style. And I think the biggest thing that I've tried to do was take the positive aspects and apply them as much as I can, and to understand the things that made me upset about a person's drawbacks, and try to have enough self-awareness to see how and why I cannot do that. Now, none of us are ever perfect, but I think one of the biggest things for me is explain why. Like, people need to know why we're doing something. Understand what our external objectives are. Understand what our internal objectives are. Like, why does our client need something? Why is it important to the project as a part of this process? If people can understand all of the contributing factors towards why we're doing something, like, they will understand the purpose of the mission and will be able to, help us strategically row in that direction. I think, one, it helps create that team cohesivity, but two, if you're just doing something because somebody told you to do it, it's not going to be a very fun thing to do. Yeah. But if you understand why and the context of why we're doing something, then it's motivating. And the more you can understand of the periphery context, then again, the more you understand how the tasks we do are linked and how they contribute to a successful project. And I think for me, that's like the most important, or that's the most motivating part about what we do. It's like, how is what we're doing making a difference?
Yeah.
Because we could spend endless hours each day.
As we do.
Yeah. But if it doesn't feel like it matters, then it's,
exactly.
It feels like it's all for nothing. So I think that starts with explaining the why. So that's like the biggest core tenet. And it's probably, my dad's not going to listen to this podcast, so I can shit talk him a little bit. But it's one of those things of like, why are we doing this? And it's like, because I said so. It's been one of the biggest reasons for me wanting to do that is, not trying to squish down somebody for asking that question.
Yeah, I love that. I think shared purpose.
Yeah.
Like I said, with the team building, or like, how do you run a cohesive team? Shared purpose is like a big one. I think for me, the things I've taken away and like put into my own management style are, I think I can safely say this, like, my people will agree, is like, I have extremely high standards. But what I also do have is a lot of patience. So I think, people learn at their own pace. Like, at the end of the day, we're dealing with people, right? Everybody's got like seasons in their life where they're go, and sometimes they've got stuff going on in their life. Sometimes they're just a little confused. Patience is a big thing, and like, I've been rewarded significantly with people that have worked with me and having patience with them. And sometimes it feels like that patience well is running dry, but it's always paid off. And I think, kind of going to your why about projects and the mission of a company and a team, one thing I've also taken away too is alignment of personal objectives and company objectives. So ensuring that the people that work for me, like, know their like ultimate objective in life, because honestly, like a lot of us don't, right? It takes time to figure that out. But aligning that with the objectives of the team is like kind of critical to getting the most out of people's performance, because if they're not, talk about the overarching why, they can understand the why of the project or the company, but if it doesn't match their own why, then they're just biding time to find another job that does match better. So I think that's absolutely critical, is like understanding your people and knowing what they're striving for really. And if they can't figure it out, nudge them gently to help them figure it out.
I think the bar comment's super important too. I always say, like, it's our job as leaders to raise the bar, but we raise the bar by setting it by our example too. There's nothing more demotivating as a human being than somebody telling you to do a certain thing. Like, let's just invoices.
Right.
Get your invoices done. Get them out by the end of the month. If they're not doing it, like, they may as well be talking in an echo chamber. It's just like, what's the point, right? It's like, okay, show me how to do it. Right? So I think that's one thing that I've always taken away, is like, show people what success looks like as well. Don't just talk about it.
Absolutely.
No, I think that's good. After wrapping it all up, I think the arguments made more so on the patient side for Robert, I think overall, and having to deal, like you said, with both of the boss types. I think I'm going to give the final point to you, although wrapping it up and you guys being able to kind of argue for both sides, I think is the ultimate lesson here. Is it's not, don't focus too much on the pros, don't focus too much on the pros of either side or the cons of either side, right? It's take what you can and kind of mold your own way, right?
Yeah.
And each situation is going to warrant like tendencies from one camp or another.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like one approach is always the best approach. Like in the, team dynamics and, issues resolutions, like boss B tendencies are definitely better than boss A tendencies. But if you're looking to like get feedback and like, so, it's like take the best bits and don't think there's a one size fits all approach. The one thing, I just keep drawing back on too is like, do people working on your team all have different personality traits and tendencies too? Like, we work in a technical environment, and so what are the odds that people are more soft-spoken and are probably, just a little bit more timid in those types of social scenarios? It's higher, obviously. So like, we all need to understand that and work with that. Like, you can't, I always say, well, I say this to my wife too.
Is she gonna listen to this too? Listen to
Shut up and do it because I said so.
No, but it's like
two less viewers.
Our personality traits are our personality traits, right? Like, we can't. If you think you can like change your personality, I think you're just putting on a facade and not being real with the people that you're with. But like, what we can change is our behavior. So like, we can change how we react to situations, and we can change like how we approach things. Like, our communication style is going to be the same, our tendencies are going to be the same, but again, the outcome can be severely different based on your behavior. So
yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree with you say, Don. It's like almost it was really hard to pick a position here, because like, I think having someone you can look up to as a boss is so critical to your success. It's like they kind of lay the blueprint for you to see how you should and would behave at that level, and definitely having someone that can do it all and achieve great things is like, you need to see it. There's so many of us that are motivated, like, we don't know what's possible until we've seen it done by somebody else, and that's absolutely critical. So I don't envy the position, because like, I think externally, like, kind of like society wise, it's very easy to side with like a more selfless but passive boss. It just like, it feels nicer. But I think that injection of ambition and success and like decisiveness is critical to any manager's skill set, and I think that like that can't be underplayed enough.
For sure. Yeah, and I think like the definition of success is never binary.
No.
So it's like,
no.
You could have one person with like 60% boss A traits and one with like 60% boss B traits, in the same role, and like both of them can be successful. It's not that both of them cannot, like, it's not like that one is successful and one is not, right? Like success just looks differently no matter who's sitting in the seat, right?
Yeah.
So,
and I mean, I honestly is like, I think that's one of the strengths of Applin too, is a good ability to like pair the right managers with like the right direct reports and create these like very strong like right hand person connections, where those strengths and weaknesses play off each other. I mean, it goes without saying, the ultimate boss that we're trying to create here is like ambitious and selfless.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's I think achievement of that as a team is like the fastest path to get there.
Understanding who would work well with whom, and balancing team structure.
I mean,
100%.
I always think about like Ocean's 11 and like, the George Clooney guy is like the shot caller. He's got the ideas, and then Brad Pitt's like the one that all the team goes to him. He's the one that gets everybody in line and cohesive, and like you need both. You honestly need both.
No, I think you guys both got great points again, and again, congratulations, Robert, winning the inaugural.
You're holding the Alvin Martin Golden Gloves right now.
Well, also half the reason he brought them in. So It'd be a shame not to give it to the guy who brought in the trophy.
Well, if we do multiple podcast episodes, we could just pass this on to the next winner.
No, but you guys presented great points, and like I said before, being able to draw on both of Boss A and Boss B as a junior is the most important lesson. Like you guys drove home, and I think that's super important, super integral to anybody who's trying to advance and learn more in their career. So that's all we have for today. Thanks again, Don and Robert, for joining me and sharing your knowledge. And thanks for listening to the workshop by Applin Martin. Stay tuned for our next episode, and have a great day.